marathon running, came home in third place. Here are a list of the entrants, and Great Britain do have a team here. With the Poles, of course, they are the hosts. And the British athletes, well, they're being led by Steve Vernon, who is the overall British team captain at this event. He came second in the English national. Frank Tickner's also there is one of the Algerians. That is Rabat Aboud. So final preparations for the men. The fourth race today. This perhaps the climax. And I think it's fair to say, Tim, that the conditions will be a little bit worse for the men than they were for the previous three races.
Well, it looks like it, doesn't it? There is a bit of wind blowing across the park, and that means that the snow's falling 1 minute and not the next. The women's race started with grey skies and snow falling, and then the sun broke out halfway through, and they finished in rather glorious sunny conditions, certainly the second half of their 4-lap race. These men have got to run 6 laps, so there may be more changes of weather conditions, but it is testing for everybody. And what you've got to say to yourself, Martin, when it's a cold, very unwelcoming day like this, is it's the same for everyone. Those who don't like it will be thinking too much negatively, and you've got to get on top of the conditions, use it to your advantage. In effect, you've got to say, well, the glass is half full, not half empty. The conditions are the same for everybody, and I'm going to get up there and push on and plough through it, and not think about the negative element.
Well, we are expecting a dust-up between the East Africans. History tells us that that will be the story. The last time an athlete not born in Africa won this men's title was 1985. Carlos Lopez, winner on that occasion. Paul Kipkoech, Kenya, was the silver medalist. In fact, in the last...
Lilesa, very, very special athlete, the world bronze medalist over 10,000 metres back in 2011. But he is also one of the quickest ever half marathon runners with 59.22 back in 2012.
And Lilesa really could be anything here. His training is rather more geared for marathon running. He ran in the Ethiopian cross-country championships. He won that race, and he said, I didn't expect to win it, but look at that. I'll tell you what, when was the last time that we had a false start in the World Cross-Country Championships? And I wonder if they're going to deem the men responsible and send him, show him a red card. It's quite interesting.
I cannot believe that. Watch this on the line. Does anybody get away early? Oh, well, there was somebody who stumbled across. I mean, that's ridiculous, recalling them. Somebody's foot went across the line. What's interesting, Martin, is that they don't seem to be chipped for these championships. There's no electronic chips. There's no mat there across the start line that we would normally find. I think they might be out there on the circuit themselves, but I can't see the athletes wearing electronic chips unless they've got one of the versions that's actually where the electronic chip is actually embedded in the number.
So that will be deemed a faulty start. And we are all set to go. There was a late entrant into the men's race today, Dotto Ikanga, you can see wearing 208, wearing the vest of Tanzania. He took the overall count of athletes competing today to 400.
Chris Derrick there to the left of picture, the American champion, carrying a huge hope for the Americans, who are the best non-African nation when it comes to distance running on the world scene. If you look at 5,000, 10,000, marathon, USA have really had a resurgence over this last 4 or 5 years, and one of the few nations that can really hold their heads up and say they've given their all to try and match the Africans in recent years. It'll be very interesting to see how Derrick goes here. Some people would think
in the men's race, a maximum of 6 from each country, the first 4 to count in the team race. Keep our eyes out for the Britons. Britain having already picked up a team bronze in the junior women's race. Milja Goreczka, the first home there, the first non-African race, that by and large the tactics are very straightforward. You go out hard and you just try and keep on going.
Well, I wonder whether or not there's any tactical teamwork from the Kenyans, or indeed the Ethiopians. Kenyans do like to run as a team. They quite often will have one athlete who'll go out hard and act as a sacrificial lamb in effect to try and draw out others, tempt others out into going very hard in different sections of the race, while the others behind, their teammates behind in the theory, know what's happening. It's all a preordained plan, and are simply gathering themselves for that final push on over the last lap. But it's settled down a little bit now. The sprint for the first minute or so was absolutely crazy.
Jeffrey Karui up there in the first two. And he's the athlete who a couple of years ago at the Brussels Diamond League meeting, at the age of the conditions were rather the antithesis of these in Poland, where the temperature has been lurking round about freezing or maybe just above. Lots of snow yesterday. The course has been wet in places, although a lot of the water, of course, has frozen, but certainly down by the lake, which you can't really see because it is frozen, to be a little bit wetter down there. And the organisers did put the wood shavings over some of the wettest places, which I know, for purists, will leave you rather shaking your head. But the East Africans showing promptly early, as you'd expect.
Well, that's Rono at the front, the Kenyan champion. Philemon Rono, just 22 years old. He's probably about the shortest guy in the race, actually. He's a tiny little character. He went charging off at the gun. And he's retaining that inside position, that pole position, running the shortest line around those bends at the moment. The course is getting a little bit more chopped up there, isn't it? But it's a
defending champion, just moving through into second spot.
And Murga there in the green to the left of the picture. He's the defending champion, and just having a few words with one of the Eritreans. I think there's a bit of pushing and shoving went on. The trouble is that that's a big pack moving at good speed, and that's a lot of twists and turns. I would almost go so far as to say, somewhat ironically, that they've made this course too twist with Martin. When you've got a big field like this, over 100 athletes, and there's what, 30 or 40 bunched there within the space of about 8 or 10 metres. I would say that those twists and turns are a little too sharp when there's only 3 minutes of running on the clock.
Yes, the course is approximately 12 kilometres. So that is 6 circuits.
You wouldn't dream of doing that in a road race, putting a pack of athletes like this, even in a marathon, never mind about something over 12 kilometres, through a series of tight twists and turns within half a mile of the start line, and yet it seems to be okay in cross country. I think it's disingenuous. I love seeing twists and turns in cross country. I love seeing hills and physical obstacles and mud, and the more things to make the athlete have to think on their feet and adapt, the better. But not when it's actually dangerous and they're inevitably tightly bunched within 2 or 3 minutes of the start.
Three of the Britons we can see there, Frank Tickner amongst them, running together in round about 25th to 30th spot, so something like 1/3 of the way down as they go up the hill for the first of the 6 times. Murga, defending champion, in the front rank. They're wearing 71. That was Goitom Kifle of Eritrea. Eritrea is the sky blue vest with the red piping. And this is the section having come off the top of the hill. This is where the descenders, we see or talk so much of that in cycling terms when they're going through the mountains in the Tour de France, and the Great Tours, or the Grand Tours I should say, but it's equally significant when you're in a cross-country race and there's a sharp descent after a big climb. It calls for an awful lot of dexterity as well as a little bit of bravery sometimes on these sharp descents. But they're already beginning to string themselves out a little bit. There you can see a couple of the Britons. Frank Tickner just going through the screen.
Quickly, Martin, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the programme, we saw that senior women's race. What I like about cross country is that it's seldom becomes tactical. There's seldom prisoners taken. They've gone very hard from the start. There's 6 minutes on the clock, and already it's breaking down, and the field is stretched out. There's plenty of world-class runners who are suffering there. I saw a man wearing 100, Faisa Leleso, who we saw on the start line of Ethiopia, struggling to go with this. He was back in about 20th, 25th place. Now, he is better known as a road runner, but he's really struggling to cope with the the urgency up at the front there, and well, I suppose the viciousness, if you like, with which they've hit the straps from the gun and gone out so hard.
And if there is such a thing these days as a cross-country specialist, he would look at this route and feel that this is one for me. The yellow and green vest, you can see the headgear over on the far side. That's the South African, Elroy Gallant, who was right up in the front for quite a while. He's a man with a good record indoors. He ran a South African indoor record at last year's World Indoor Championships in Istanbul. There he is, right on the right-hand side of the screen with the long socks and the green and yellow, green and gold vest with the black hat on as well. Oh, and there's a faller. Well, and two in fact. Well, that's more like the Grand National, isn't it?
Well, the first one, I think it was Ndiku, brought down the second one, ironically, a teammate.
I think it was Korea who came down first of all. I think it was the Kenyan, Japhet Korea. Might be interesting to see that again.
Isn't it just? And it's, again, you know, that's what cross-country is about, coping with the obstacles, coping with the conditions, and he failed. I know you could see it happening. As he went over it, his centre of gravity rolled over the top of him, and he went down. His legs were behind him when he landed. Watch, here is left of picture. Yeah, it's Ndiku who went down. But Korea fell over him, I think.
It was Korea's the first one. He was the one who took off there at the jump and then stumbled. It was...
You sure?
Yeah. Yeah, Korea, who's now, I think, about 30 or 40 metres back.
Well, it hasn't changed too much, has it? It's still a lead pack of about 30, which is dominated by the Africans, but good to see other athletes trying to mix it with them. There's a South African up there, there's a couple of Polish vests, I think, a couple of Americans as well. And there's a stout resistance from the rest of the world against the East Africans, but one just feels there is a degree of inevitability about it. Collis Birmingham, I think, is up there as well for Australia in about 10th place in that white vest.
And there's another faller there, and that was, I think, one of the Eritreans going down, who had to pick himself up. And Lelesa, who started off very slowly, and we've also got an athlete there who's doing up his shoelaces. So all sorts of things happening here. And Lelesa, who, well, it took him a while to warm to this course, but he's now taking himself to the front. You mentioned Collis Birmingham. They were talking him up, the Australians, before this. They were expecting great things of him today, and he's certainly looking strong there, isn't he?
Well, he is. There's the tall figure of Birmingham, about 6th place with the long hair and those black arm warmers in the white and green of Australia. The 28-year-old, well, he is a world-class athlete. We know that. He's a 27.29 10,000 metre runner, 13.09 for 5,000. Good to see Lelesa has forced himself to the front. About 6 or 8 minutes ago, well, maybe 5 or 6 minutes ago, he was way back around 20th, but he's up towards the front now. But what is interesting is the remote is let up at the pace at the front. The new names appear at the front, so it's almost like there's this constant surging at the front, and if you want to be there, you've probably got to be in the top 10 places, not necessarily hitting the front, but just covering everything, so you can try and run a more steady race than something that is actually like a fartlek almost, with surges going in.
Jonathan Taylor looking very prominent for Great Britain. He's broken away from his two teammates, and I think he's back in about 20th spot at the moment. I also just saw Alimu Bekele, the former Ethiopian, wearing the vest of Bahrain. He simply tripped up on a flat, straight bit of ground. So for many of these athletes, they're encountering the sort of course that they haven't seen too much of. And look at Birmingham having a super run out there in front now. Let's see if we can catch the Briton coming down here on the descent. It's Jonathan Taylor, 117 on his back, who was looking very strong indeed. Not on that picture.
Interesting, Martin. Birmingham hit the top of the hill in front, and he's coming down off the hill in about 6th place. There's so much about leg speed. That's a long sweep down that slope of fast running, and he's just not able to stay with it as the leg speed comes into play. But really good to see the Australian giving it a go here. And Gallant there of South Africa, I think, to left of picture, also looking pretty strong. Certainly got enough gear on. Gloves, long sleeves, hat, long socks. Boy, I wonder what else.
Yes, he won't see conditions like that. There's the Briton, there's Taylor coming through. He's having a good run. Jonathan Taylor, the English steeplechase champion a couple of years ago. He's certainly the leading Briton at the moment. Collis Birmingham of Australia. So just slip back a little bit, as Tim was saying there, on the descent. Just fell back a little bit. Gallant there of South Africa in about 6th or 7th place.
Kirui is up there as well, by the way, is one of the young Kenyans. He's just 18 years old. He ran 26.55 for 5,000 metres, Kirui. In fact, he's 20 now. He ran it when he was 18, excuse me, in Brussels back in 2011. That's the sort of calibre of athlete you've got to be contending with. It's a time that is beyond any non-African in history, and he did it when he was 18.
I beg your pardon, Tim. I've been following the progress there of Correa, who, after having dropped right back when he got involved in that tumble, when there were 2 or 3 who went down, well, he's now brought himself right back towards the front of the field, and there he is, Correa. Merger, the defending champion, there in 2nd place. We've got Kenyans in 1st and 4th places. Birmingham's back there in 5th. You see there, Medine of Eritrea. It was one of his teammates who tipped up a little bit earlier. Kip 2, you can see to the left as well, and also one of the Ugandans. That's Kipsoro, Moses Kipsoro, who 3 years ago became the first man to win the long-distance double at the Commonwealth Games, or the first man at least since 1934. As you might expect, Kenya and Ethiopia at the race at the moment. So it's Correa who's worked his way back to the front there. Merger in 2nd place. Medin there coming through. Collis Birmingham. Kip 2 is there as well. 2 Ugandans in the leading 10.
Chris Derrick is there as well, the US men's team captain, who I saw running the Armory in New York about a month ago, Martin. He's only 22 years old, but he ran 13.12 for 5,000 indoors a month ago, and that's a really good indication of the sort of leg speed you've got to have to contend with the pace at the front of this race. And you can see Derrick there, centre of picture, about 15th place in that all navy blue strip of the USA, going really well, just moving along. And he's with Ben True as well, another of the Americans who's shifting well. He's only run 13.20 for 5,000 as Ben True. He was only 5th in the US cross-country championships, in fact, but he's coping with these conditions really well, and it is a very, very difficult circuit. There's so many twists and turns, far more than I can remember seeing in any previous edition of the World Cross Country Championships. Far more than I can remember seeing in any previous edition of the World Cross Country Championships. Some of them you're running on a reverse camber, and you can see athletes really struggling to keep their line. Core strength and agility to keep running well, keep running strong. Look at this bend, that's the most awkward of the whole race. You can see some of them almost slipping sideways to their right as they go around that sharp left-hander.
Sergio Sanchez of Spain, I think, is the leading European at the moment. He's back in about 20th spot. You might see him in a moment in the best of Spain. Still waiting for him, I think. There he goes, that's Sanchez. You just saw go through the bottom of the screen. He's the leading European at the moment. Birmingham, the Australian and the South African running together just over that artificial obstacle. But one or two of those obstacles have picked up, or claimed 1 or 2 victims over the course of the afternoon. Lelessa, who got himself to the front. Well, he's running quite an idiosyncratic race here, isn't he? He was slowly away, then we suddenly found him at the front, Tim, and now he's dropping back a little bit, is the road running specialist.
Yeah, he's back in about 12th place. I mean, this is not a sort of course that is to a road runner's liking, I have to say, and I approve of that. I don't think it should be. I think cross-country should be a specific discipline in its own right, so to speak. It should test your ability on all surfaces and all your skills. But it is good to see, at the moment at least, Birmingham and the Americans True and Chris Derrick up there mixing it in the top 12 or 15 places. Ben True, coached by my old mate Mark Coogan from the USA, who's a former marathon great himself. Really good to see the athletes, former athletes, having a solid input to the way these other athletes, this current generation, are developing. Collis Birmingham, for example, is coached by Nick Bideau, himself a pretty useful middle distance runner in his younger years. Of course, partner to Sonia O'Sullivan, who has won this title in years gone by, the women's title.
Yes, the Eritrean there, Medin, who's very prominent. He came 2nd here 3 years ago behind Joseph Abuya, who was the champion for Kenya on that day. So Medin, and we stress that whilst we're running at the same venue, it's a very different course to the one that they used 3 years ago when they came to this Lechenek Park in Bydgoszcz. But Medin, the Eritrean, now and in front alongside Merger as well. Birmingham just dropping back a little bit, the two Americans just behind him. And I certainly haven't seen a European ahead of Sanchez at the moment, who is the Spaniard back in about 20th spot, but they are beginning to spread out quite a bit now. You can see that. They are going to be running for something like 32, maybe 33 minutes, so this is the end of the third lap, so pretty much at the midway point. And it is Medin there of Eritrea who has the front, alongside the defending champion Merger. 3 Kenyans there. Birmingham getting back into the race.
This is a really significant point of the race, Martin. When you're going into the third quarter and the gaps are developing, you've got to decide, like Birmingham, that was just beginning to get detached from that quintet up in front, those 5, and he's pushed on hard, he's dug deep to get back in contact with them. Hopefully can be dragged away and perhaps open up a gap on those behind him. But this is a very, very testing point. I think on the final lap of lap and a half of a circuit like this, you can dig deep. You know you've only got 5 or 6 minutes of hard running to go. But it's this third quarter in so many middle and long distance races, which really does test your mettle.
So Birmingham certainly settling into a reasonable pattern there, back at about 6th or 7th spot. It's Correa who has the lead. Medin, the silver medalist here 3 years ago, in 2nd place alongside Birmingham. There are a couple of Ugandans showing prominently there. Kipsuru, you can see on the left. Also there is Toroitich, Timothy Toroitich, who finished 4th in the Ugandan Championships. So the Ugandans showing prominently here. Toroitich you can see on the left there. So a fair spread of nationalities.
Well, these 7 just beginning to ease away, Martin, on this 4th of 6 laps. Good to see Cam Levins of Canada. He was 11th in the Olympic final over 10,000 metres in London last summer. Also up there in the top 20 or so places. Although the gaps are beginning to grow now, and it's taking its toll. But the Americans having a fabulous day through Ben True and Chris Derrick. They've just got to keep focused now, keep working hard. They'll be hurting, there's absolutely no doubt about it. So different to a track race, this discipline.
The 2 Kenyans in that leading group, Japhet Correa and Hosea Macharinyang, who's a winner of 7 medals at these championships, all of them team golds, but he's in with a chance here of picking up an individual medal. 2 Americans there looking strong, 2 Eritreans in that leading group as well, a pair of Ugandans as well. So I must say there's a fair international spread. We quite naturally, I suppose, talk up this as being a great head-to-head between the Ethiopians and the Kenyans, and there's no reason to believe that that isn't how it'll turn out in the team competition. But we've got 5 nations or so here who have a chance of producing the individual champion.
Ben True, by the way, who's back in about 8th place at the moment, is a former cross-country skier. So maybe he's thinking, yeah, I'm used to this, I can handle this, a little bit of snow, I feel quite at home. But he's having a fabulous run as the American in 8th place. His teammate Chris Derrick in 10th. The Southern Hemisphere nations coming off a track season. They've got great leg speed, so it's played to his strengths, if you like, the timing of this race.
So it's Correa who has the lead. Kenya in front. It's then the Eritrean, the silver medalist from 3 years ago here, Medin, who's in 2nd place at the moment. They are running in pairs, aren't they? A pair of Kenyans, a pair of Eritreans, a pair of Americans. A couple of Ethiopians there. Merger, defending champion, now in 3rd place, working hard up the hill. This is the hill for the 4th time. Birmingham still in that leading group. Let's see how they descend here. Birmingham, well, not quite as smooth down the descent as the 5 men in front. Kenya 1, Eritrea 2, and well, suddenly the front of the field taking a rather more East African look to it. Although we do have 4 nations represented, with Ethiopia, Kenya, Eritrea and Uganda. The Australian back there in 6th place at the moment.
He looks relatively comfortable at the back of that group with Collis Birmingham. 2 laps to go, 4 done, 5:23 that lap, exactly the same as the previous lap, funnily enough. Lap 3 was 5:23, that lap was 5:23. It's an unrelenting pace at the front end. There's wearing 100 going through, that's Lilesa, and the gap has really grown back to him. He's had a bad patch in the middle of the race, hasn't he? Chris Derrick to extreme right of picture for the USA, their champion, also suffering. Needs to dig deep here if he wants to retain a place in the top 10. And you have to keep working, you have to keep telling yourself they'll come back, somebody will come back, somebody in front of me will go through a bad patch, they'll hit their limit and they'll come back to me. So if you can keep pushing on hard, look for that reward. And every place, of course, matters in the team race when you're trying to record a points total for 4 scorers as low as possible. It's critical that you get across the line as high as possible, not just for yourself but for the team.
Goitom Kiplay is the second of the Eritreans there, a former world youth bronze medalist at the 3,000 metres. That was 4 years ago, so he's still a teenager, is Kiplay. He's back there in 7th place at the moment, just behind Collis Birmingham. It's Correa 1, Merga, the defending champion, still there, but he's alone as far as the Ethiopians are concerned. It's Lilesa. Back there you can see the second of the Ethiopians with one of his teammates just behind him there, but Correa out in front. 2 Ugandans there, Kipsoro you can see on the right, Moses Kipsoro, the track specialist. Or there is Toroicic, Timothy Toroicic, that's him on the right, the second of the Ugandans. Well, I must say, it's good to see that the World Cross Country Championships has their spread of nations out in front here.
Almost like the old days, isn't it? You know, you can see Australians and Americans, non-African born athletes, mixing it in the latter stages of the World Cross Country. No European there, and that's disappointing, I think. But of course, European distance running has been in the doldrums a little bit in recent years compared with 20, 30 years ago, as it is in terms of strength of depth in the UK and so many other Western European nations.
If we look back over those last 30 years and just the 5 non-Africans to have won individual medals here. I mean, Tim, you won 2 yourself, of course, 2 silvers back in 1984, and then 5 years later in that Ngugi, one of the real heroes of these championships over the years. The other medalist, Steve Jones, who finished 1 place behind you back in 1984. Steve Jones, a really gritty performer. The most recent non-African to win a medal was Sergei Lebed of Ukraine, when he came second back in 2001, and the Portuguese Paulo Guerra, that was back in 1999. We did, of course, have a Belgium champion in 2002.
Disgraceful, very sad end to what one thought was a great career worthy of so much merit. But yeah, when you say I raced against John Ngugi, by the way, I think I lost by about 28 seconds or something like that. It wasn't much of a race, it was an exhibition by him.
I was going to point out that Ngugi's win that year was the biggest margin.
God knows how many more behind. Time we're on lap 5 and the gap's beginning to develop, and all of a sudden Birmingham is struggling. Ben True back there with him contesting 6th and 7th places.
So Kenya out in front, one of the Ugandans you can see there just slipping back a little bit. It's Correa out in front. It's then the silver medalist from 3 years ago here, that's Medin. He's in 2nd place. Correa 1, Medin 2, defending champion. Merga there in 3rd place. Kipsoro, the track specialist from Uganda, is in 4th place. And you'd have to think now that the medals should be between these 4, although the second of the Ugandans only about 10 or 15 metres behind them. That is Timothy Toroicic.
5:22 that lap. So we've had 5:23, 5:23, 5:22. Metronomic running from these athletes up at the front end. Chris Derrick goes through, or just 8 or 10 seconds down. Collis Birmingham, I saw him holding his left hip just now. I wonder if he's picked up a niggle, and that's why he's dropping back with just a lap to go. That would be very sad if he has, because he's given a wonderful account of himself, Martin. But Medin is doing a lot of the aggressive running here. Wouldn't that be a turn-up to have a non-Kenyan or Ethiopian winner? You have to go back a few years to find that.
Yes, Medin, his coach, has got a name to die for. Geronimo Bravo, would you believe? He was the same coach as the World Half Marathon record holder, Zasene Tedeschi. And he's there in second place, is Medin, the man coached by Geronimo. Then the Ugandan, back in fourth. That's Moses Kipsero. And these four moving further and further away. And we saw in the women's race how previous experience at the venue, if not necessarily that man there, Medin, in the sky blue and red vest of Eritrea, silver medalist here 3 years ago, is growing with confidence all the time. But Korea it is out in front. Korea, who finished only 6th in the Kenyan Championships. Kenya 1, Eritrea 2, Ethiopia 3, Uganda in 4th place through Kipsero.
Well, I wonder if Korea and Medin have done their homework, because Merga is a devastatingly fast finisher, and they have got about 300 metres off the bottom of the hill of a flattish running with a few twists and turns before the finish line, maybe 400 metres. And Korea here, I think with Medin, has got to try and work hard over this next couple of minutes to try and take that sting out of Merga. He's humped-shouldered, isn't he, the Ethiopian, the defending champion in 3rd place in that green vest. And he's just beginning to look like he's suffering a bit. And he's doing exactly the right thing, in my opinion, Korea here. He's pushing on hard, Martin, with, what, about a kilometre to go. Look at that, the cadence has picked up. The leg speed has dramatically increased as he drives up this little section. And Merga's going to have to dig deeper than he would have liked just to stay in contact.
Yes, well, Korea still just 19. It's a remarkable transition from junior to senior competition. Just a little bit of a wobble there as he tried to cut that bend as tightly as he possibly could, and making his way towards the hill. His eyes and his concentration will already be focused on that last climb. He knows he's not only got to work hard up it, but he's then got to run hard when he gets to the top of it, if he is to get a winning lead over Merga. Merga, such a tremendous track pedigree as well, of course, with that bronze medalist, that bronze medal in the World Championships in Daegu from 3 years ago. Remember, he also finished 3rd in the 5,000 metre race until he was disqualified for having stepped off the track. But now the Kenyan really is stretching the legs, and it's 10-15 metres. It's not a winning lead yet, but if he's strong up the hill, Tim, he's going to take an awful lot of catching.
And I wonder if that hill will be significant. Remember, it was Emily Chebet in the women's race who eased past Ayalu up the last big hill with about 600 metres to run, and that was really decisive. Will it be him, Martin? It's a very good point. But Korea doing everything right here. Can you believe this lad was only 6th in the Kenyan Championships, and yet here he is running away maybe to the world title. And if anything, he's getting quicker and quicker. A little glance over his shoulder there, uses that corner to get a view of the chasers, and he'll be delighted with that side. A gap of what, maybe 30 metres back to Medin and Merga, and he has executed an absolutely brilliant plan here. He's kicked on hard through this final lap just to snuff out any chance of Merga being close enough to use that vicious sprint finish of his. The hill for the final time, Martin, and Korea looks absolutely fabulous up that.
Well, Merga's got past Medin, at least for now. But now Korea, having got to the top of the hill, there will be some relief, but he now knows he's got to descend as quickly as he can. Merga, the man with the leg speed, is working hard, but that gap is about 25 metres, something like that. And really something has got to crack hopelessly if Jeffet Korea is not going to take this title now. It's the final run, something like 200 metres to go, not much more than that now. And he's just picking his way through the fastest route to the finish now, and Merger just looking over his shoulder, and that's almost a resigned look, trying to defend that silver medal. The defending champion will fall just short here, and the man who finished in second place 3 years ago when this venue hosted the championships, that's Medin of Eritrea. Well, he's going to get another medal here, but there is the champion. It's Japhet Korir. Kenya win the men's title again, as Joseph Abuya did at this venue 3 years ago. Imana Merga, the defending champion, just falls one position short, and it is Medin of Eritrea in third, and the Ugandans are going to come through in fourth, and I think that's also in fifth spot. Also a good run from one of the Americans as well coming through. True it is, who comes through in sixth place.
That's a fantastic run from True in sixth, Kiflay seventh, Birmingham in eighth. He's hung on really well, has Birmingham. I thought he looked injured with about a mile and a half to go. But Kenya doing the double, taking gold in the senior women's race and the senior men's race. 32:45 the time for Japhet Korir in that men's race. And Sanchez, the best of the Europeans, Martin.
Yes, he had a good run there, did the Spaniard well. Just a chance to really reflect on it. And for the purists, it was a return to the good old-fashioned cross-country course on a cold day. Plenty of hills, bit of mud as well. But I guess the conclusion is, Tim, the conditions, or should I say the outcome, Kenyan winner of the men's race, Kenyan winner of the women's race, same outcome.
Well, I wonder whether it's a coincidence that we've got Americans up there, we've got Australians up there, we've got a Spaniard finishing pretty well, and this was a return to real cross-country running, in my opinion, Master. I'm delighted that this was such a tough testing course. That would be one of my final comments on it. I think cross-country has come home once again. The IAAF and indeed the organisers in Bydgoszcz have done well to stage this race on this Mizletchinek Park in Bydgoszcz, where it has been a genuine cross-country race instead of a manicured lawn affair.
The confirmation, Steve Vernon just coming through behind him. But I must say, it has been a very enjoyable afternoon at Bydgoszcz in Poland. The IAAF World Cross Country Championships. From Tim, myself, Martin, bye-bye.
You have mail.